Welcome to the Bend Don't Break podcast. We are powered by The Source Weekly, Bend's locally owned newspaper. This podcast is our eddy in the rushing waters of local journalism. We are glad that you're taking some of your time to listen to us chat with the people who shape our local community.
Thank you to our presenting sponsor, RE/MAX Key Properties, a family-owned full-service real estate brokerage specializing in residential, luxury, commercial, new construction, and ranch and land properties. Their new state-of-the-art facility at 42 Greenwood Avenue is a modern, collaborative space and the new home of the Bend Don't Break podcast recording studio.
I'm Aaron Schweitzer, publisher of The Source and your host for the Bend Don't Break podcast. Thank you for listening. Today, our guest is Zak Boone. He is the Vice President of College Advancement at Central Oregon Community College and the Executive Director of the COCC Foundation. Zak received his Master's of Public Administration with a focus in nonprofit management from Portland State University and Bachelor of Arts in International Affairs from Lewis and Clark College. Zak has worked in respected charities in Central Oregon since 2007, including serving as Executive Director for the Ronald McDonald House from 2007 to 11, and as Associate Director of the Deschutes Land Trust from 2011 to 2015. He is also actively involved in the Rotary Club of Bend, Mount Bachelor, and served as club president for 2018 and 29 years. Zak currently serves on the boards of City Club of Central Oregon and the Bend Chamber as an ex officio member representing higher education. Zak, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate it.
So that is a lengthy number of boards that you've served on, and I know anybody that knows you knows there are many other boards in here that we didn't have the time to mention in here.
There may be a couple. Yeah.
I mean, I got to know you. We served on the Bend Cultural Tourism Fund board together, which was really fun and I think super interesting at the time.
It was, yeah. I mean, here's the thing. Time is valuable. Time is money. Time is a valuable resource. So I don't say yes if I can't do it. And a lot of that does come with the job, to be fair. So I can do a lot of that service representing the college. Yeah. But I also just love to be involved in the community.
Yeah. And I think with the kind of the nature of your position as an ED in a nonprofit and also being a vice president, it's part of being good at your job is getting involved in the community to a really deep level the way you do.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's, we're lucky in Central Oregon to have a lot of organizations that are doing good work. I know that's true in Portland and Eugene and Boise also, but I think in Bend, because of our geographic isolation and sort of this, there's been a little bit of a pull yourself up by your bootstraps through the decades. And I feel like that community engagement piece that a lot of people follow is pretty unique here when I talk to my colleagues around the country as well. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know whether I'm the best example, but you do feel it. You feel the pull. Yeah. I like to get deeply involved in the community as well. And you're fielding calls, people want you to serve. And I think there's lots of, how many nonprofits do we have in Central Oregon?
Well, if we take out homeowners associations and churches, we have a high number, but not actually all that high. We hear that a lot. Too many nonprofits. Right. I always say nonprofits are private corporations. They go away if there's not funding for them. Right. So, in the free market, actually nonprofits are a little bit more of a player than even public sector organizations.
Yeah, you do hear that a lot here.
Yeah.
Sure.
But a lot of HOAs, just the way Bend has been set up. And of course, most churches are C3s as well. So I like to kind of take them out of the conversation.
You're serving as City Club president right now.
Starting November 1.
November 1.
Starting November 1.
Okay. I was at the City Managers Forum.
That was I. Yep.
That organization has moved pretty nimbly. I also serve on the programming committee, and they've moved pretty nimbly out of COVID when it got kind of crushed, and not City Club, but a lot of those kind of forums went to
definitely. It was the in-person component.
Yeah.
COVID obviously took that away, and doing hybrid or online or virtual. We all remember that was, do we want to sit on another Zoom or another virtual? No, I don't think anyone did. And so coming out of COVID, there was this explosion, I think, of also some events. Edco, Chamber, the college, City Club. So now I think we might have possibly overpopulated the calendar with opportunities in that vein.
Yeah, when we sit on the program committee, we're constantly reviewing what other organizations are offering, trying to find a path forward that isn't being duplicated. And I do think that after the vacuum, a lot of people stepped in there and thought, I mean, I wouldn't want, I mean, I went to the city managers forum. I wouldn't have necessarily tuned into that if it was all of them talking on Zoom.
Right. Exactly. It's just hard. I think the value of some of those engagements at City Club too is that you can actually hang around after the forum and maybe say hi to Eric or Keith or one of the city managers. So having that access is a part we really like. Awesome. But there are definitely a lot of events when we don't even sometimes look for strategy. We look at the calendar. Right. So, I mean, that's that's just the reality. Okay, is there an event that night and who's putting it on, right? So, you know, I think it's great to have that menu of opportunity for community members, but it can be a little bit much.
Yeah, I sense something will shake out. I mean, there's a ton of enthusiasm after COVID and kind of a wide open field, but I think that's kind of getting filled up.
Yeah, I do too.
Given your experience on nonprofits, I mean, you've served on prominent ones like Ronald McDonald House and the Land Trust. I think a lot of people know you from your Land Trust.
Perhaps.
Days,
yeah, perhaps.
You know?
It was super fun.
And what do you see as some of the, like, I don't know, I don't want to say roadblocks to success, but maybe we could put it in a positive way. What are some of the things after serving on these boards and in these executive functions do you see as some of the missteps that nonprofits make when they think, hey, I'm in this area, there's always competition. What are some things you've learned?
Great question. I think let's just segue right back to events.
Yeah.
That all nonprofits should have a signature event or gala or golf tournament. What I would say is it depends. We're lucky at COCC Foundation to have Meal of the Year. We have an awesome culinary program. That's a nice synergy. It's been going on for 45 years. It sells out. We raise a lot of money for scholarships. If someone came to me today and said, hey, we want to start a gala with 400 people that costs 85 to 100 grand to put on, would I tell them that's a good idea? Probably not.
Yeah.
So I think it really does depend. And I think a lot of nonprofits chase funding, but also marketing and awareness, fundraising all in one. And it's really hard to do that together. I think that strategy of engagement for nonprofits is much more, okay, are we looking for individual philanthropy? Are we looking to just raise our brand awareness? Are we looking to grow make the tent bigger, if you will? So I think that's one thing I would say is that there, nonprofit events feel like, oh, we just have to do that. Well, I would say, do you?
Yeah.
Maybe you want to sit down and do 350 coffees with potential donors rather than an event with 350 people. I suspect you actually might raise more money and awareness with that strategy in the former.
We wearing my other hat as producer at Lay It Out Events, we are approached by nonprofits on a pretty regular basis regarding strategies for events. The go-to for a lot of events is races.
Yep.
The first thing that pops in my head is, we'll do a race through downtown Bend and we'll do this thing without being aware of the challenges and how little actual money that you. I think the thing when nonprofits think about this stuff and they get in, they see the income without the expense side.
Right.
And then more importantly, when I'm talking to them, I'm like, well, at the event, when you're supposed to be meeting everybody, what's your role going to be? And usually their role is they've got a bunch of electrical cord on one hand and a ladder in the other, and they're running everywhere. They don't say hi to one person at those things.
You can run yourself ragged, and I've been involved in a lot of events. It's not to pour cold water on events. I would just say, what are your goals? What are your outcomes? Again, when when I have partnered on Balloons Over Bend, there's a great example.
Yeah.
Our goal, stated goal, written goal, was to get more folks on the Bend COCC campus a couple years ago. We wanted to just have people take advantage of it. It's an awesome campus. It's a great view. And also be reminded of this amazing, state-of-the-art college that's in their backyard. Well, the way you do that is host a cool event that might have really nothing to do with your mission. And there's 1,500, 2,000 people thinking, oh gosh, right, COCC, and they're doing these great things and bringing community together. So that was our goal. It's really worked. The fact that there's a scholarship component to it, that a little bit of the money goes to scholarships, is really just gravy. That's not the intention behind the event. We just want people to remember the college is there and to continue to, be top of mind. So again, that goes back to what are your goals with any event?
Yeah, I mean, we've gotten into a situation where we've agreed to help with some fundraisers.
Yep.
And which is a great concept. And we got approached a lot about that term fundraiser, which was kind of new to me, kind of post-COVID, when people were coming out of a period in which they had done, they needed to get back to doing, things like Meal of the Year, which would have been suspended.
Right.
And could not separate fundraiser from fundraiser.
That's right.
The fundraiser was like, at the end, it was like, well, we didn't raise as much money as we hoped to. And you have that conversation, well, what was the goal?
Right, exactly.
The goal was fundraiser.
That's right.
People seem pretty happy.
It's pretty crude, the analogy of dating and fundraising, but well, this is a podcast. We're supposed to be slightly edgy, right? So my edginess would be simply to say that one often doesn't go on the first date and expect all the things. Let's just call it, a committed long-term relationship. Right. That's what you don't, the first date, like, I'm ready for a committed long-term relationship. You go on the first date to say, I'd like to get to know you and I'd like to share a little bit about me.
Yeah.
That's what fundraising is to me in fundraising.
Yeah.
When then you do that 4 or 5 times, you might be able to say, hey, can I hold your hand? I mean, really. So I think that notion of, if you want to raise major gifts from somebody, the first coffee is not the place to do that.
Yeah.
So fundraising is a term that's been around for a long time, and we just say to come up with that critical mass, learn our mission, learn our engagement, meet some other people who might be like-minded. So I think that fundraising is a way then over time you get to know some of those friends a little better, and some of those friends bring benefits and some of them
let you
don't.
hold their hand.
That's right.
People are grabbing your hand. They're reaching across without consent.
Well, there's also a great term in fundraising. Consent always. No, truly, consent always. And that's true in fundraising too. Right. Do you know what this exchange of funds is? Here's what we're going to do with your resources. Right. Here's our overhead. To me, that's actually, I think consent's appropriate metaphor. Sure. But we use this term in fundraising. For fundraising, we call them touches, which I think is probably a little bit maybe out of form. But the notion was, that's a touch, a touch, a touch. A touch can be a phone call, a card from a board member, hearing something on the radio, et cetera. So fundraising, so there's some fun.
We're trying to make some friends.
We are.
But
We're
not trying to get married here.
No. I mean, if that's your intention at the end, great. But I think sometimes we just want to date for a while, and that can be of value too. But in all seriousness, I do think the takeaway there for me is, if you want to raise a lot of money for a cause, usually it's helpful to have a lot of folks to draw on for that. Yeah. You could have one great benefactor. There's some nonprofits that do really well with one solid benefactor. But then what happens to that benefactor if they go away? What happens if that money dries up? What happens if there's some mission alignment, or they decide there's something else they want to support? So it's just good business to me to have diverse revenue streams, and in individual giving, that means as many folks giving as you can.
Let's shift a little bit to boards. And you serve in both capacities. You're an executive director and you serve on a lot of boards. What are some missteps or misconceptions for people who are like, they're retired 1 month, they're like, I'm ready, I'm coming in hot, I worked for Chevy, I know boardrooms.
And, actually Central Oregon draws a lot of those folks, right? I mean, I talk to folks all the time who come here and have been, retired astronauts and physicists and all the things. Right. It's really great. There's a great depth of knowledge with that. But again, it goes back to, what are you looking for? So let's just carry that forward. It's like an event. Okay, what are our goals? I would always tell a nonprofit organization to have clear job description in the board member. What is it you really want? Do you need someone who can help you raise money? Do you need someone who can help you rewrite your bylaws? Do you need someone who can help you manage your finances? Those are discrete skill sets. And I think what boards sometimes get into is, we just need people in the room, and we'll take warm bodies. Right. And then sometimes those board members are like, I'm the warm body. I want to dictate what goes on here. I could spend the whole hour telling you about our governance model, but that'll put everyone to sleep. But I think the takeaway is, if you're out there looking for a board to serve on, it's got to be a good mission. And I would say to you, like, what is the nonprofit looking for? And do you bring that? And then to the nonprofit, be really clear about what you want to do, who you want to add, and why. We invite all of our prospective board members to come sit in a board meeting, and they must join a committee first. Yeah. It's a way for them to get to know us and us to get to know them. Because once someone gets on a board and they might be not the ideal board member, it can be just really challenging from a relationship standpoint to move them on.
Oh, yeah. No, I was going to start... We could start segueing into some board horror stories.
We will not. There are too many to share.
I will say that some of the boards that that I've served on, I mean, probably the biggest, I think his biggest pitfall is not being clear on the front end about what you're getting into. And then when you do get in there, not being clear about what the dynamic of the board is, you know, and then the role shifts. Your role shifts. It's like, oh, hey, we surprise, there's 3 dysfunctional board members here. We got 4 good ones.
That's right.
And
That's
we're
right.
trying to, you know, move this thing forward. And when what are you supposed to do in that environment?
It's a great question. The other thing I think we do is because we rely on these revenue, we rely on donations, right? A lot of, you know, nonprofits are largely, you know, driven by individual giving, or at least a lot of them are. And so you'll see somebody maybe with a high net worth who's a board prospect, and just be clear. Do you want that person on the board because you think they can give? Do you want that person on the board because you think their circle is a wealthy circle, for example?
Right.
I think it's actually okay to say to a board, hey, we need more capacity, the veiled word for, do you have the ability to give, you know, your resources in terms of finances and I think sometimes board members then come on and think, oh, I didn't know I was expected to give at this amount. So again, being really clear with a board job description. So what we say in our example, we say a gift that's meaningful to you. Now, we don't say we have to be one of your top donations or you have to give X amount, but we expect you to give financially that's meaningful to you. That usually sorts itself out. But I've seen, talk about horror stories, ones where people just go after high net worth individuals, just go after them and share your mission. Yeah, giving them, they don't need to be on your board.
No, that I think that's, to me, that's one of the biggest. You could, because you didn't vet, you vetted their portfolio.
Exactly.
You didn't vet their skill set,
Exactly.
nor do you even like them.
Exactly.
You know?
And again, if you heard, people maybe heard these terms, fundraising board, working board, governance board, all the things. Well, I think boards should be all of those things. The number one question I get asked, whether it's City Club board or the foundation board or other boards I've been on when I'm talking to prospective board members is, will I have to fundraise?
Right.
Do I have to do fundraising? And then again, a whole nother podcast. What is fundraising? Does that mean, hey, invite people to the table at the gala that are your friends? That's fundraising. Sure. That's fundraising, but it's fundraising. Or does it mean get on the phone and dial for dollars? Right. If you're a prospective board member and a nonprofit says we need you to call for dollars, I would ask some real hard questions about the revenue model and why maybe there's no staff. If there's one staff, sometimes that is required and board members are fine with that. Yeah. But I think it's just being very clear about what those expectations are, because there's a lot of myths around fundraising. And I think when the organization can, that's a staff function rather than a board function.
I can say telemarket fundraising is not a good model. Can I say that?
You can say whatever you want.
I've been in, I mean, when you're presented with that idea as a board member, it's one thing if we're going to fundraise or use talents to create a thing that is going to be worth donating to, asking people for funds. But when you get the list, like, hey, these are the high net worth people in our community, go ahead and start swinging. No. Or the best one time, I don't think this will get traced back, was, you know, the old, we're putting you in prison.
Yes, I remember it quite well.
I need
lock you
$10,000
ransom fundraising.
Ransom fundraising.
Really works well when people feel completely, manipulated into giving.
I would get a call from somebody and they would say, hey, I got to keep calling if I don't get X amount of dollars.
I think, fundraising starts with fun. So I think some people try to at least make those things, because then there's some marketing, there's some awareness. Oh, get me out of jail to support Easter Seals or March of Dimes or whatever. Yeah. And I'm old enough to remember, the phone bank. So you'd sit there and you'd watch Jerry Lewis, or you'd watch all these folks do these televised, they called them telethons. Right. And it was fascinating because if you really look back, and you can go on YouTube and watch them, they're fantastic. Often, though, the number was on the screen. So when you say they weren't calling you. You still had to call them. There was still the ask. And you always wanted to make that call and see someone in the background pick up the phone, and maybe that was you. This whole, all these people with these landlines. Right. But I think that actually the takeaway for there to me was, they were actually saying, hey, give us a call to make that donation. Right. And that's always fine. It's no different than a direct mail appeal, I think. But when you're dialing for dollars is what we call it. Boy, that's tough, whether that's straight sales or whether that's in fundraising. Do
people still
that's
use
tough.
That model?
I don't know. I don't know of any nonprofit in Central Oregon who that's a base model. I think there may be some times where a membership model at City Club, to be fair, we will call folks to remind them to renew their membership. So we ask the board, like volunteers, hey, we're going to do a membership calling drive. And so, actually the answer is yes, but every board member knows if they sign up for that, that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
They don't have to do it if they don't want to. And these are existing. This isn't a cold list. These are folks that have been a part of the organization. Hey, it's Zach from City Club. Thanks so much for your membership the last 4 years. Could you renew? To me, that is really different than dialing a number out of the blue and saying, hey, here's who I am. Or we met once and I'm going to call you and ask you to make a donation.
Yeah.
I think if you've got an existing donor base, the thing I'd say is people like to be reminded. I can't tell how many times have happened to me where someone, even a major gift, $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, that will lapse, which means it didn't come this year, even though it came last year or previous years. And I'll send an email or give a call to a donor and say, hey, your scholarship lapsed. We'd love to get you back. Oh my gosh, I forgot. Thanks for the reminder. That's almost always the case. People do forget. And I think whether it's $10 or $1,000, we all get busy. Right. You see a lot of nonprofits try to get people on auto donation, monthly donations. It's for that reason, right? Because we don't have to be the one to be like, "Hey, Bob, love you, but you've given 12 years in a row and forgot this year." Right. In my experience, 9 times out of 10, Bob's like, "Oh my gosh, thanks so much for reminding me. How was everything?" Dialing cold for dollars is hard, but membership drives, boards calling to renew people. That is maybe a little bit of a gray area.
Well, you get and do you find like with let's talk about Central Oregon in general as you've moved through these boards. I mean, people talk a lot about the fact that some of the more traditional donors and people who have supported a lot of these nonprofits across the years are getting older. It's a constant struggle for nonprofits, that aging out of the donor base. But we hear about a lot of new money that's moving into Central Oregon and the potential for this new money. And, the nonprofits are, constantly saying, how do we catch the new money? And is that real? I mean, is this real?
It's real. Yeah. It's real. And I think I have a lot of answers to that. But the first thing that popped into my mind was when you have a community growing as fast as Bend, insert Central Oregon town, right? Culver's blowing up, LaPine, right? All the places. And you rely on individual giving to keep your mission afloat. It's a new potential source of customers, if you will, or your sales team, your sales should borrow from some books, but basically your prospect list grows. Right. So if there are 10,000 people in your community and you only need 100 of them to give to meet your goals, and all of a sudden you have 100,000 people in your community, how do you get in front of those new 90? How do you tell them what you're doing? Yeah. Back to fundraising. Let's have a run and we're the beneficiary. And somebody's like, I like to run, even though I just moved here from Lexington, Kentucky. Oh, this is a benefit for Bethlehem Inn. What's Bethlehem Inn, et cetera. So I think that's a little bit of that cycle. But we hear about organizations buying lists from real estate agents, from title companies, from looking at publicly available information from Deschutes County Dial.
I've heard AI is like pulling people now.
But I would still go back to the thing. Well, so now I've got a list of all these people that have moved here. What's their affinity to a community college? What's their affinity to a community college foundation? How would I know that? Right. So that's where that fundraising and awareness piece really comes in to say, hey, over here, XYZ nonprofit. Right. Oh, and they'll be like, oh, where I was from, we had XYZ nonprofit. Now, some people will seek that out because they're philanthropic minded, but a lot of people are really scrambling to figure out how do you get the new wave of people to notice your organization. Yeah. And there are different ways to do it. The other piece of the aging demographic is we've heard for years in philanthropy about the largest transfer of wealth in U.S., probably world history, with the greatest generation, the boomers, whatever, handing down this huge wealth. So that was always the thing. Well, how do we get in front of the kids of the, so I've got, Mary and Bob, hypothetically, or Mary and Mary, or Bob and Bob, and they're in their 80s and they've given to me for years, and I want to make sure their kids continue that. Well, that's a real challenge. Their kids might have completely different interests philanthropically, which is why plan giving has gone up because those older couples...
You want to catch them before they give it to the kids.
You do. So you do, or you want to make sure that if they've been giving for years, that they know how to do that after they've passed, so that those dollars can come in. So at the foundation, we've had more donations come in from what we call plan gifts. These are gifts that come after people have passed on in the last 3 years than any other source. So those were years of giving, and then they're like, hey, I want to leave you in my will or my estate, and then they do, and those dollars are often quite large and often unknown. We didn't know it was that much, but that's the single biggest mover right now for most organizations in this town, is if they have a robust planned giving program.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that doesn't answer the question of how then you get to the new group.
Well, I hadn't thought it till you said it that, and I should, because I know obituaries and morgues are grappling with this enormous amount of folks in the boomer generation who are passing, but that is an enormous amount of wealth that's flowing somewhere.
It is. And again, it goes to many things, but it often goes to philanthropy.
Yeah.
That when I worked at Ronald McDonald House, I had been there, 6-7 months, and got a call from an attorney in town who was settling an estate, and a donor was leaving us about, I think it was about $450,000, or that was the intention in their bequest. I'd never heard of this person. I didn't know her name. I looked in the database. We have a database, and saw that when the Ronald McDonald House was built, they did these pegs, because it's a wood frame building. So you could have your name on a peg that went into the house forever, right? Drilled in. It's a timber frame house. So I go back to the donor wall, and there's her name. She bought a $50 peg and never gave again.
Right.
Didn't know who she was. Right. All of a sudden she passes, and we get this call that, a 6-figure gift is coming.
Yeah.
I called one of my board members, and I said, I was kind of heartbroken that I'd never gotten to meet her, sort of thank her.
Sure.
And he said, well, just know that she was probably watching all those years, news clips, checking in. Maybe she was dropping off, games for families, et cetera. It was so interesting.
Yeah.
And so I try to remember that now, that every interaction I have with somebody, whether they want to give, whether they want to volunteer, whether they want to come to the gala, just planting that seed of our work might translate into something later, and they might decide to leave us in their will or estate, which is kind of the ultimate of, I think, endorsements of your mission, is when someone says, I believe in you, even if I'm not able to check on you, I'm going to give this to you even when I'm gone.
Yeah.
It's pretty humbling, actually.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
You have, I got to believe that for something like COCC Foundation for education, where, you've got you're the transition for all these kids moving out of high school. It's such an important part of people's life cycle. And do you get a lot of those kind of donations?
Yeah, we do. We get some.
A lot.
A fair amount. And here's what I would also say. Let's dispel some community college myths while we're on the podcast, shall we? The average age of a COCC student is 25.
Okay.
So the notion that you matriculate after high school into community college is happening more and more. We have more sort of 18-year-old, 19-year-old traditional college students right now at COCC than maybe ever. It's hard to compare apples to oranges because data and the residence hall and all the things, but we're seeing an influx in community college enrollment in the last 2-3 years. It's a bit unprecedented, and it's largely driven by 18 and 19-year-olds. So yes, but what I would say is, when your mission is simple, when it doesn't take an hour or 6 events to explain, it's just easier for people to either say yes or no. And I don't care if someone says no, but if I've spent a month or sent them information or have a coffee or invite them to lunch and then they don't end up donating, that's fine. But that's a little bit of an ROI loss for me. People know community colleges. People know what scholarships are. They just do. And so when someone hears about that the first time, we raise money for scholarships at the college.
Sure.
I'm done. They understand that. Then they can ask more questions, but they do get that.
Right.
Hey, we're feeding, folks that are hungry. We're keeping kids safe from abuse. Those missions, I think, if you look around the country that do well, whether it's United Way or Red Cross or all Boys and Girls Club, the ones that have Ronald McDonald House, it's pretty simple for people to understand the mission.
Right.
When it gets a little more convoluted, it just can be a little bit more difficult to explain what you're doing and then create kind of a swell,
How is the foundation? With the number of people coming in, what I feel is the growing importance of community colleges.
Yeah.
Has that translated into a foundation that's seeing the same kind of growth?
Candidly, no. Here's what I'll say to that. Spoiler alert: we look at the number of donors that give every year, number of individual gifts, and then the amount, the average gift size, and we look at this every year. The last 3 years, the total number of donors to the COCC Foundation has been up to about 2%. So flat to me, not keeping up with the growth in the community.
Right.
The average gift size has more than doubled.
Wow.
And what's the reason for that? So we have more people giving full scholarships or half scholarships or what we consider a major gift, which is arbitrarily defined for us. It's $1,000 or more. they're giving more, but it's the same amount of people giving. Now, some have stayed and some are new. There are new names in there.
Sure.
Where we're seeing new names, if you will, is people taking community education classes, coming to the Nancy R. Chandler lecture series, right? There are more people sort of engaging with the college and more students.
Sure.
But in terms of the number of folks that are giving to the foundation, it's been kind of flat. I'd love to see the data from my colleagues in the community. I know a lot of the other executive directors. I think it's similar. Yeah. We have two fundraisers. It's me, who has a lot of other jobs, and then Wendy on my team. So we don't have a huge fundraising shop, even though we try to raise over $1 million a year.
You've got one that's been around for 45 years.
Exactly. Right. So trust, reputation, all those things matter too. Yeah.
You've got a few run-of shows to fall back on.
People want to give to a winner too, and they see that COCC does great things, so they want to be a part of that. So we are not just privileged; we're spoiled at the college to have such great faculty, such great staff, and in 4 communities in Central Oregon. But in terms of adding new people like that groundswell. So here's a great example. We have our gala, Meal of the Year, and it's 400 people, and it's sold out the last few years. It's really wonderful. And there are always new people at that event, and they might give at that event. The real key is, how do we steward them so that they give again?
Yeah.
I saw data one time about charity in the U.S. and the percentage of people that give to an organization one time and then never give again. Well, it's because they were asked or came to the event or bought the raffle ticket from their grandchild or whatever that may be. But the real key is retention. So what we look at as a better factor right now, not that we're not looking for new donors always, is retention. So how many of our existing donors give regularly? Right. And that number for us is really high compared to our peers.
Do you, I don't like to talk about millennials when Megan's in the room. She's listening. But,
well, hold on. Remind me. So let's go through. I mean, I used to know these as an Xer. So
I'm going to be bad.
No, it's good. So remind me our millennial dates here.
It's coming up because, that's the problem with when you talk about millennials for over a decade, they're 10 years older when you're talking about them. But I think it's, Megan, chime in. What's mid-80s
Okay,
to mid-90s.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I work with these millennials. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, at the source, we're a whole show.
I know. I get older every day, apparently.
And but there is there's a lot of raps, but one of them is that they are not as philanthropic, or the future looks not as philanthropic because millennials don't give as much. Is that true? Do you see that? Or is that something you talk about in nonprofits?
We do, but again, it goes back to, here's what I'd say, the folks that work for us and the folks that I know that are in our loosely defined millennial. We'll get back to our listeners and viewers, right?
And I noticed I skipped Gen X. I went from boomer to just don't.
We're the smallest in like 100. No one cares about Gen Xers anymore. We're on an island. Only you and I. I think I'd say this. Healthcare is wickedly more expensive than it's ever been. Housing is wickedly more expensive than it's ever been. Childcare, if you can find it, is more expensive than it's ever been. To be let's call it a 25 to 40-year-old or 30 to 42, whatever that is, it's more expensive. And then you add on what I call the bend tax. I mean, it's expensive to live in Lexington. Well, I don't know why Lexington, Kentucky is my go-to today. I was talking about University of Kentucky with somebody yesterday.
Is listening from
hey, you know what? We love our, no, I have a friend who's, anyway, that's a different story. I'm just like, why is that popping in my brain? Bluegrass State. But I think, when you look at the pressures on millennials in terms of what, do they have disposable incomes, really where I'm going? I don't think they do, or often they don't. Right. Or that big transfer of wealth actually hasn't happened because folks are living longer. The millennials that work with me, I would actually say are, again, let's stereotype, super well-rounded, really get that. I think we often put tropes and stereotypes on younger generations just as a little bit of it's just about an aging thing. That
it's just fun.
Yeah, these kids these days. Well, you were that kid one day too, right? All these people that used to do, yell and scream and throw stuff at the Beatles when they came are now like, oh, that Taylor Swift, she's a real bad influence. I'm like, wait, who are you? So I think that's a big part of it. I think look at volunteer rates, look at engagement online, look at there are other metrics to see if you're engaged and care about your community. And I would suggest that millennials care just as much, if not more. It just may not be with their pocketbook.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I bash Gen Xers more than I do millennials.
Well, that's
I feel comfortable
because
we can do that. Yeah, and I feel like we do get a hall pass.
What's your favorite way to bash Gen Xers?
Their music, for I really hit them on music.
A lot of Queensryche fans are taking taking that offensively.
I mean, if you're a big hair guy, no, just stay away. Just stay away.
I mean, but
and they're coming through Hayden Homes now, right? They're coming through, and I'm seeing them, and I'm like, they were bad then, and now they're here again. I tell my son I've had to listen to this awful music for forever, and I'll die, and it'll still be on the radio.
We should call over there. We should get a little crowdsource going, because I think we didn't have enough big hair this year. We've not had Motley Crue. I've not seen Rat. No Queensryche, right?
No Led Zeppelin.
I'm like, wait, that's a different one. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
we've had Robert Plant here, but no, I think that's funny, but because music is often. But all the kids are listening to it. The mullet came out.
It's coming back.
There'd be no mullet if there wasn't Gen X. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah. Again, bad hair too. You can hit us with that as well.
We're on video too with this, right? Too. So I can't. None of the hair things work for me. I mean, I had good hair once, but it was like the last time I had good hair was like 88.
I had a mullet once, and someone did this to me.
Well, I'm not saying I ever cut off someone's tail while they were sleeping in a sleepover, but I heard those things happened.
We were the rat tail people.
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta
that's
look at
that's one we need to divorce ourselves from.
We had it. It went all the way down here.
Gone, and should be gone forever. Gone. I never had. I just don't have enough hair to begin with.
I never had one.
Yeah.
I dreamed of one, but then every
too.
time it would get to a mullet stage, it was cut.
I still dream of hair. It's not happening. Although it does seem to be coming out of my ears more and more, which is super fun.
Super problem.
Are we getting off topic here?
We can just veer over.
But see, let me bring
hygiene.
it back. If you had a nonprofit that was all about removing hair from ears and explaining the value of that, it'd be tough to raise money.
Well,
right? It's a complicated mission.
Listening to you, as long as it's a clear mission, I think we would be for good.
I think you've
it's only about that.
And I love all my people with hairy ears, but if you're standing at a grocery store in line or next to somebody, wherever it is, in your close proximity to someone, now that we can be close again, and you realize like there's like a whole bushel of stuff going on in their ear, not my favorite thing. It's not that they shouldn't, right? And so I think that actually would be a nonprofit that could move some needles, is to just remind people.
Well, I'm pretty close to Larry David moment if I see that. I might just poke him.
Yeah.
And go, are you aware?
And I know
you can't see what's going on.
And that's just it.
It's big.
Knowing's half the battle. And it's usually men, let's be honest. It's hairy-eared men. I don't see a lot of women with hairy ears. Yeah. So just a comment.
Well, with that, we are at the end of our time here.
Are we really?
Yeah, we are.
Oh, that was how we wrapped it. I love it. I love it.
We could keep going.
Yeah. No, that seems like appropriate.
Rite Aid. We'll be coming up with Rite Aid nonprofits.
Well, my final takeaway is get involved, lean in, time, treasure, talent. This community is built on people volunteering and being good stewards. I'm dead serious. It's a wonderful Central Oregon community. I'm sure Lexington, Kentucky is great too, but it really does take all of us to move the needle. And I really am glad to live here because so many people want to get involved and make the community great.
The smartest people I've met in Bend, I met through boards.
Yep, agreed.
I mean, it's amazing to me when you sit down, and I mean, granted, there are some challenges for sure, but I always am caught up in the new people I meet and how effective they are and how much smarter than me they are. And
one of my former board members says when he meets new people, back to that comment, hey, welcome to Central Oregon. What are you doing to get involved? And I've seen him do it like that. I like talk about a culture piece. Sure. This is a community that if you can't pick whatever, there's a lot. There's a big menu, but what are you doing to get involved?
Yeah. You, why not a shameless plug? You've got an event coming up.
We have, shameless plug. We have a lot. COCC.edu. Find all the classes you need and some great programs. I really mean it. We have an event coming up. I think you mean the one at Anthony's. You're talking about that event?
Anthony's.
We do a feast at the Old Mill.
It's incredible.
It is. It's a lovely event. Anthony's restaurant closes the shop down for us for the whole night. All of the proceeds go to our culinary school scholarships. Which is a super cool thing, and people can find more information on the foundation's website. So just go over to your favorite search engine and type in COCC Foundation. You'll get there.
I went last year and was amazed at how generous Anthony's is, and the oysters. Can we talk about that?
I mean, I think we have about 50 tickets left. There's an outdoor oyster bar. Oof. Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. So they donate 5-course meal, wine pairings, all the things. Amazing. And they close the whole place down for us. It's a really lovely, generous model, and we're really thankful.
Great. Well, thanks, Zach, for joining us.
Thanks, Aaron.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, speaking of nonprofits, please also remember the Sources LIOEF Foundation and give to support journalism in your community as well.
Here.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to the Bend Don't Break podcast, powered by The Source Weekly. To read, hear, and see more of what we do, go to bensource.com.